Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis in the United States. And today we're going to be collaborating with Tom Ellsworth, the BizDoc, and Amy Dangerfield from Valuetainment'S, The Decision 2024. Make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this. Make sure to go ahead and share this with your friends on X and comment down below because it'll help us out with the algorithm. Today we're going to be talking about the 2024 presidential election, the polling industry, different states and how they may go, and much more. Stay tuned to hear our conversation. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis in the United States. And today we have on Tom the BizDoc and Amy Dangerfield from The Decision 2024. Go ahead and introduce yourself, guys.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amy Dangerfield, as Lester mentioned. I've been here with Valuetainment for a little over a year now. I am Australian, so I do get a little bit of poking fun made at me sometimes that an Australian is educating people about American politics. But I've had some incredible mentors here, one of which is, of course, Tom. He's taught me so much about this space too. He's taught me so much about this space, and I'm really passionate about American politics because I believe that at the end of the day, this election really, it sounds dramatic, but the state of the free world really depends on the outcome of this election. There's so many other Western countries around the world that are going to follow suit with what happens here. And if we go into, an election season under, what I perceive to be very liberal and even fringing on socialist leadership, it could be a very scary thing, not only for America, but the rest of the world, including Australia, where I come from. So that's a bit about me and why I'm so passionate about this.
Hello, everybody. Tom Ellsworth, the BizDoc. I've worked with Patrick Bet-David for nearly 20 years. A variety of companies, including you hear us on the podcast every now and then talking about PHP, the insurance company based in Dallas, Texas, which was sold 2 years ago. And then we're building Valuetainment, Bet-David Consulting, and things like that. I'm president of Lion Holdings, which is the holding company that Bet-David Consulting, Minect itself, which is your great product, and Valuetainment Media Group, which is producing The Decision 2024, along with VT Analytics, which is the statistical group that's inside there. And so we started doing this because we felt that there is a need among our audience for truth and integrity about polling. We would talk about polls, talk about situations leading up to the election, because who's getting elected matters so much to the Valuetainment and Bet-David Consulting audience, who are entrepreneurs and leaders around the world, most of whom who care about liberty, free enterprise, freedom of speech, and capitalism being unfettered and having less regulation and more freedom for people, for the freedom to try, the freedom to succeed, and the freedom to fail. And so that led to, why don't we talk about what's going on, and why don't we take some of our intellect and apply it to the polling data? Because we saw that all polls weren't created equal. We saw that there was narratives that were being pushed by media outlets. And we saw that there was, perceptions that the voters had who just wanted to know, damn it, which of this is real so that I can understand what's going to matter to me. For people that care about the election, when they see the poll going in a certain way, they want to work harder in their community because they care about the outcome. And so that's a little bit about myself and what led to The Decision 2024. And Amy, who came to the United States, it's amazing. I've been so impressed because you know more about American politics than most people do. What was something you said? You said something on a map. You said most people couldn't find Michigan on a map, but here you understood the counties in Michigan and what was adding up to be, impact areas for the election.
First thing that we have is the Atlas Intel poll that did drop a couple of days back. This is the most accurate international pollster that we have right now. Not only were they accurate in the United States, they were also more accurate, in Chile and Colombia, in the last 3 Argentinian election cycles, and in Brazil, as well as the Democrat primaries in 2020 and the 2022 midterms. So this is the best thing you could possibly find out there. And Donald Trump is up in the popular vote by 3.5 points. Now, I know you guys have been kind of focusing more on the sort of like battleground states, but if this were to come true, it would be sort of a big electoral college landslide. Even the pollster who's in charge of the company actually said that based on this, he's got about 70% odds, which is where both of us kind of have it right now. We have it a little bit above 70, actually. I'm surprised they have it. I'm surprised they don't have it a little bit higher. But I kind of want to hear you guys' thoughts on this poll, kind of what was leading up to this, kind of just the general idea on this poll.
It was very, very refreshing to see a poll come out with some accurate data. We have been reporting on the national polls every week. We don't put as much emphasis on it in the Decision 2024 because obviously that's not what decides an election. It is the battleground states. But, we take a little look every week. And initially when we first started, we were looking at a lot of the really common, aggregates. We were looking at like 538. We were looking at, what's that other main pollster that comes out with the national
Real
polls?
Clear.
Yeah, RCP,
And 270 to win.
Yeah, all of those guys, right? And it was always really astounding to me to see Harris up ahead. It was consistently Harris up ahead pretty much as soon as she became the official nominee. And then eventually we came across Rasmussen. I mean, I'm sure Tom had already been following them for quite a long time, but he introduced me to Rasmussen. And obviously they get a little bit of a bad rap in the industry. There's a lot of people who say, why do you rely on, statistics and data from a very conservative, pundit? There's going to be bias.
Scott's a corrupt conservative homer.
Yeah.
Really? That's not true. I mean, compare his last polls to the results of elections, and now go tell me what you think.
Exactly. And so when we took a look at that graph, and I think we're going to get to that graph here throughout this presentation, Lester, Tom and I featured it just on our last episode where we actually showed the accuracy of these different pollsters, the margin of error that each one had when you look at the actual projection and their results versus the results of the 2020 election. And we could see that, number one, Rasmussen was actually, I think, number 3 or 4, way more accurate than any of the original pollsters that we were, looking at, like the ABCs, the 538s, all of those ones. But then we saw that Atlas Intel was at number 1. The most accurate. And so, it's just really, really refreshing to not only see that we've been a little bit vindicated in some of the things that we've been saying over these last several weeks, but to be able to actually look back to the 2020 election and say without a shadow of a doubt, this was the most accurate pollster. And this is what they're saying now, 3.6 ahead for Trump. So it's really nice to see.
And when we dove into that, everybody likes to. So if you like the poll, don't talk about the crosstabs. Just throw it in your chyron and throw it in your headline of your newscast. If you don't like the poll, dive inside and find a crosstab you don't like and say, oh, not enough women. Oh, not enough, Hispanics. Oh, too many of this. Oh, too many young people, too many old people. So that's the game. But it was refreshing to see a highly rated pollster come out because, you know what? Do I have a personal preference in election? Every man, woman, and child in America does. Every does. And I'm saying children over 13, 14 who are actually tuned in to care about it when I say man, woman, and child.
Yeah.
So we all care. We all care one way or the other. But you know what I care deeply about? The quality of the valuetainment content. And we don't want to have people to look back and put clips of us forever on Twitter, wrong about this, wrong about this, wrong about this, wrong about this, and create memes. That stuff lives forever and it affects your credibility. We are calling it as we see it, and we are getting away from a preconceived narrative that we have. We saw what ABC did on the debate. I mean, their bias and narrative came into how they personally managed and conducted the debate. And then the affidavit coming out from the individual inside ABC that now the ABC doesn't want to talk about it. No wonder they don't want to talk about it. It's not surprising, they don't want to talk about it. So, that's exactly what we saw. And so it was refreshing to see this, a little bit of vindication. But you know what? There is 6 weeks to go now to November 5th. And, Americans want honest information, and we're trying to provide it.
Right, 100%. And you know what's actually quite funny? I have the graph that you guys show on your screen quite a bit during the show. And what's interesting is somebody actually put their latest polls on the screen for you guys to see. And notice the most accurate ones, everybody basically in the top 5, starting with Rasmussen, they all have no poll or they have a Trump lead. Now, all the polls that are below Rasmussen and below kind of RMG research there, which doesn't really have a exact poll right now. When you look, they're all Harris plus ones, Harris plus six from I believe it's Morning Consult, which no, there's no way Harris is up six nationally. That wouldn't make any sense. So that's actually even to the left of Biden's or to the right of Biden's polling. And there's a graph I want to show you guys that I think is interesting that I put out a couple weeks ago. And there was actually something here that I kind of did some analysis on that was very fascinating. What I did was I basically looked at the trend between RCP's aggregate in 2020, the final average, and what they had at the time. This was posted on September 12th of 2024. And we see RCP and 538 both show roughly a 6-point swing in their aggregates from 2020. And mine has about a 7.5-point swing from 2020 to the right. My final average is something that I've gone back and kind of retrospectively created, which is sort of an average that grades all pollsters based on sample size, accuracy, how many undecideds they have. So actually, the more undecideds you have, the less of a weight you get because that's less representative of the sample. And depending on how many polls you have currently in the aggregate, you get a slightly higher weight too, and your sample size kind of helps your grade in the aggregate. So when I was able to do that for 2020, I actually was able to get Biden plus 5.3 as the spread, and he won by 4.5 points. So that would have been a more accurate aggregate than RCP or 538. And at the time, Trump was ahead by 2.3 percentage points ahead in the average. So that's a 7.5-point swing. And when you look at the average between the swing, that's a 6.3 percentage point shift. And when you swing the Biden plus 4.5 popular vote, you get Trump plus 1.8. And Rasmussen, like we've kind of gone over before, has the Trump plus 2 national popular vote margin. They actually just released a new poll that has Trump up 2 points in their weekly polling. And when you look at the map, it's sort of similar to what we both have in the Electoral College. I mean, you guys are giving Trump Arizona pretty heavily, Georgia at this point, North Carolina and Nevada, and there goes Pennsylvania Republican. Now, I have New Hampshire and Minnesota a little bit closer because I tend to focus on all the states, but I know you guys are mainly focusing on the probability of what his chances are to win, and this would show a pretty decent chance for him to win the Electoral College. So I thought this is something that you guys would kind of like to see. Now, I do want to bring this up as well. There is a poll that came out that's not a national poll, but it's actually a poll from the Teamsters union, which is the biggest union in the entire nation. Teamsters member polling gives Trump an overwhelming lead over Harris. Trump basically at 60 when you round it out, and Harris all the way at 34. Now, the last time they decided to not endorse anybody, I believe, was 1988 with Michael Dukakis, and we all know what happened to him. He got trounced in the Electoral College. And so I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts on this poll because this is a pretty big development. Even Biden back in June was still leading this poll. He was ahead by 10 points, which wasn't great, but he was still ahead. Now Donald Trump is ahead by double digits against Kamala Harris. Some even say that these are like Reagan-esque numbers for a Republican performance, which is insane. So I want to kind of hear you guys' thoughts on as to why this could be.
Well, I think that it comes down to two things. The unions in America are important organizations. You go back at the origin of the unions, and they were trying to establish standards for wages, health and safety requirements before OSHA and the federal government were doing it. So the unions had a place in America, and people had a great deal of pride of being part of that union and the brotherhood. That's why you see a lot of the unions refer to themselves as brotherhoods. And you have electricians, plumbers, Teamsters, and these important unions had their place. Nowadays, the question is, do they still have the same effectiveness and need? I'll let other people debate that. But there's people that are very proud of what they do, have a vocation. And what's interesting is that the bottom line is they're treated like a voting bloc, but they're individual voters, moms and dads, living in this country that are concerned about the economy, in terms of, how is it going up or down, and are there layoffs or not, the economy. And then they talk about, inflation and cost of living, and that affects them like anybody else. Yeah. And it is not surprising to see that the working class in America are casting their vote based on economics, which is exactly what those focus groups saw right after the debate. So to sum it up, we were not surprised to see the internal unions voting in favor of economic issues and leading toward Donald Trump the same way we saw those focus groups from Rasmussen and Frank Luntz and others right after the debate.
Yeah, absolutely. We do deep dives into different states week over week. Some of them have, historically leaned red. A lot of them have historically leaned blue, and they're even considered to be very liberal states right now. And regardless, when we look at their top three issues, maybe reproductive rights is in there as number three. But the top two issues, pretty much every single time, regardless of whether it's a liberal or Republican city or state, is that they care about inflation and they care about the economy and they care about the job market. They know they're being lied to, that this is the best job market we've ever had. These things, they're failing to state that all of these so-called jobs that have been created are just jobs that came back after COVID, after the pandemic was over. The American people know when they're being gaslit, they know when they're being lied to, and these remain their two top issues, regardless of their political leaning. So yeah, I'm really not surprised to see that this is how things have ended up stacking up when it comes to the unions.
Hey guys, just for a little bit of a quick sponsor break, we have SoCal Strategies, a pollster that I work with all the time. He does polling for us and Red Eagle Politics. And I thought I'd let you guys know that we do actually have a GoFundMe in the description down below for you guys to be able to kind of donate to him. These polls are not free to conduct, and we do need a lot of help with these. We have a goal of about $15,000 to be able to reach the goal for everything that we want to poll. We want to poll 6 battleground states and the national level before the presidential election comes. So guys, if you can donate in the description down below, I will greatly appreciate that. And I'm going to go ahead and jump over to something from Nate Silver, because I think this is sort of interesting, and I think kind of lends us to why he's sort of gotten these things wrong for the past couple of election cycles. But he kind of made this post, and it's sort of a meme, but basically what he's trying to say here is that people who look at the crosstabs to try to look at the little details and see if there's something wrong with the sample are sort of the inferior person when it comes to politics, and somebody who kind of just tosses it in the average is sort of a more educated person on the matter. And I don't really agree with this, because I do think that it is important to look at some of the samples as well. I want you guys to go ahead and see something that I posted. And this is something that Tom actually shared the other day. And it was sort of a post that I made talking about how I was right about Nate Silver trying to kind of dupe everybody into his model that basically would get polling averages of his favorite pollsters and then kind of just put it together and call it a day, and then have this thing that said, oh, well, if he's leading by this much or she's leading by this much, she wins the electoral college. And now all these, influencers were saying, oh, look, he's got a 60-something% chance in Nate's model. And now he's only ahead by 5. It's a complete drop. And it was because of Quinnipiac University. And in that graph that we were just looking at, they were the most inaccurate pollster in the 2020 presidential election. And so, funny enough, the most inaccurate pollster in the entire nation has shifted his model on net like 15 points to Harris. And I believe she caught up even more. I think she's about to take the lead. And so I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this and kind of what your opinion on this is.
So I'm dubious on some of these momentum polls on a national basis, and the reason I am is because part of the strategic thrust of the mainstream media is to talk to momentum, and because there is a part of the undecideds who don't want to be left out. And so there is a heavy piece of influence that comes on a little part of the undecided and the independent voter. And so mainstream media, she's ahead, is actually influencing votes of the people that don't have a lot of data or not sure they want to go. Well, everybody's going this way, so it's okay to vote for her. There's part of that in the tail. Standard deviation, you've got 2/3 and then like 97%. If you just look at standard deviations. Well, what's interesting here is I believe that what Nate was doing was showing momentum here, but then creating a news story when that collapses together. Now you've got a news story. Here comes Kamala. Here she comes. She has momentum. There goes Trump. Because there is nothing in anything that the Silver Bulletin or 538, which is not run by Nate, it's run by another pollster who came from The Economist, who has a very left-leaning bent and a lot of statements he's made that show his dramatic bias. And then some of the 538 analysis, when you look at the composition, you're like, why is that in there? Why is this in there? When you look at the compositions, it's like chili, right? You have a pot of chili from 270, you have a pot of chili from Real Clear Politics, and you have a pot of chili from 538. What's in the chili? This is saltier, this is less salty. This one says, oh, we're only going to use, we're going to bias to the likely voter polls over the last 7 days. That tends to be more historically matching up with ultimate election results. And then people go, oh, no. I'm going to use the last month and a half, and I'm going to use LV, RV, don't really care. I'm going to put everything in there. And there are big bias polls that are in there, left or right, that are affecting it. It's like having too much salt in the chili. And so I look at these aggregate pollsters, and people don't know that they can bias their own aggregate by saying, oh, we're just looking at everybody. It's everybody that's in there. That's all we're doing. That's it. And really what people don't know is they're carefully picking the ingredients in the chili.
No, and you're correct, because even my national polling average, which I'm doing to kind of get rid of a lot of the polling bias, I could put a D+10 electorate if I wanted to, but clearly that's not going to happen. The electorate was D+5 in 2012. I mean, Romney actually won independents, funny enough. It goes to show all this, independent talk. Oh, if you win independents, you win. That's not really the super main focus of elections. It's actually your base is really what matters in elections. And in 2016, it was D+3. 2020 was D+1. And now I've plugged in kind of Atlas Intel's polling electorate from 2020 into my average there. And I was able to get Biden plus 5.1. So I was actually able to get it even more accurate. And their shares have actually gone up. So I've created something that's pretty good. And now for 2024, when I corrected for Atlas Intel's electorate, when I plugged that in, now Trump is up by 3.5 points as of today in my aggregate, which is pretty close to what Atlas Intel has. And that's not even just including accurate pollsters. That's actually including everybody else in as well. And what's very fascinating is when I created an average with just the top 4 pollsters that we talk about, Atlas Intel, Rasmussen, Big Poll Data, The People's Pundit, and there's one more, I believe. I'm kind of forgetting it right now. But when you put those 4 together, the average is actually more left-leaning. You kind of actually need these liberal pollsters to kind of boost both candidates up a little bit, because funny enough, the accurate aggregates actually lean left. So my aggregate actually needs more polls. The more polls you put in it, the better. But this just goes to show that I can literally influence my aggregate however way I want. I could show Harris up by 10 points if I wanted to. So people that say, oh, I'm not biasing my model, all the models have bias. But I think having responsible human intervention in them and not just letting some numbers kind of decided, like even 538, their way of deciding the states is looking at their average and then guessing where their polling average is going to be by election day. Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You're just like, oh yeah, it's at 4 now. Let's say it's at 5. Like that's not responsible whatsoever when it comes to data analysis. And they have a fundamentals model which skews it like 2 points left, and then they average that out at the end. It doesn't really make any sense. And the fundamentals model is like 88% of the weight. So it just goes to show that you can really bias some of these aggregates. Now, the 2 final things I want to talk about are my analysis in New York, which I think is something you guys are going to really be intrigued about, and some mail-in visual data from North Carolina, and then we'll kind of end it off here. So this is some analysis I did on New York, and a lot of people don't know this, and you guys haven't talked about this on the show yet, but New York actually had some of the worst polling errors out of any state in the country last cycle. I mean, the final poll from Siena College, which is around this time, was a 32-point Biden lead, and he only won by 23. That's a whopping 9-point miss, even worse than Wisconsin polling. Like, that's a very abysmal miss. And now Harris is up by only 12. So she's polling 20 points worse in the state of New York. And I kind of want to you guys to comment on this and kind of give you guys an opinion on what you're seeing here, because I think it's very fascinating that she's polling the worst in one of the most deep blue states. And I think we can kind of commentate on this about how the polling industry is kind of trying to say, oh, this is happening, but then other data kind of contradicts it. So I want you guys to give your opinion on this.
When you look at their sample, the people that they're talking to, it's not always the most accurate. Oftentimes these pollsters get paid to procure, whatever result they're kind of hoping that's going to support their narrative at the end of the day. New York was never Trump. It was never going to go to Trump in the year 2020. And, when we look at the difference between where Biden was at then versus where Harris is now, I think a lot of people probably thought in 2020 Biden was a better candidate than Harris is now in 2024.
You make a really good point. Sienna, how much energy and effort do you think Sienna put into that last poll for 2020 in New York? It's like, and how much were they really paid to do that? How much of the focus would a campaign or a news outlet be paying Sienna to go do that? So a lot of times the pollsters look at it and say, this state is going to go for Biden. We're not really worried about it. Get the poll done, get paid, get out the door. This state, it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. But to your point, then it ends up being a huge, huge miss because it was far closer than anyone thought. However, I think this year, focusing on it because they were very much, I think, worried about what was happening with Trump and Biden. And Harris has not proven to be a candidate that the New York Democrats have embraced as tightly as they were embracing East Coast liberal Joe Biden.
And I think that it is interesting because this is not necessarily about, oh, is Trump going to win New York? Because we all know that probably won't happen. It may be a lot closer, but this goes to show that the polls that have Harris up 5 and 6 points nationally don't make any sense when you have a Siena College poll that has Harris up 12 points. Like, the environment doesn't even line up.
Yes.
Like, there's no way Harris is up 4, 5, 6 in the popular vote, and New York is a 12-point win for Harris. Like, it just doesn't line up. So this kind of just goes to show the really disparity between the national polling and the state polling. And by the way, the New York Times and Siena College, they just put out their own national poll. They put out a tied national popular vote. Now, actually not today, yesterday. But that matches up sort of with this poll that they have, but then they have a Pennsylvania +4 poll. Like, Pennsylvania is not going to vote 4 points to the left of the nation while the national popular vote is tied. Like, that doesn't really add up.
The math isn't mathing at all. And isn't it interesting how when, let's say that Trump is up +1, they will still paint the agenda as, oh, they're tied right now. But as soon as Harris is up +1, all of a sudden she's charging ahead, So it's not only the numbers that are obviously being a little bit manipulated, but then the reporting of the numbers as well, and the outcome that those numbers are having and the way it's portrayed in the media. It's very interesting.
And for the last point, I know you guys got to get going, but the last point I have here is actually some real data that we've gotten for the election already from North Carolina. We have about a week and so of data, mail-in data of just party affiliation requests. And what you'll see here is that this was the 2020 map for the mail-ins. This was the final map for the request for the mail-ins, and turnout was a lot higher. And you see that it is very, very blue, way bluer than the actual map, because again, this is just the mail-in ballots. But this map now looks like this as of September 15th. So this is a huge difference. And you could argue, well, COVID is kind of, the COVID turnout's going to be lower, less people are voting by mail. But when you look at Pennsylvania, the voting numbers are not that different, except Democrats are just missing 300,000 votes. Republicans are actually about to pass their own number for 2020 in mail-in ballots. So the fact that you see this much of a drop in mail-in ballots for the Democrats while Republican requests are up, there's a 15-point net disparity from last time. I think really speaks to both of our analysis and how we basically have North Carolina going for Trump pretty much no matter what, while other people will say, oh, it's competitive, oh, it's Tilt Harris. And you kind of have this map showing that the mail-ins are way closer. And not only that, the Republican counties are new Republican registries. The Democrat counties that have gotten closer are Democrats switching to being unaffiliated. And so it's like, if there's Democrats going from being Democrat to unaffiliated, where else are they going to go in the general election? I mean, some of them may break Democrat for the governor's race. Some may break for Harris, but a majority of them probably do break for Donald Trump and the Republicans at the end of the day. And so this just really goes to show that our analysis is kind of lining up with real-time data that we have. And I think this is something really interesting that you guys should really point out on the decision. I think this is something that really captivate a lot of people's attention.
Well, we may go to North Carolina, but we're going to look for a variety of them and go dive in. As we leave here, where do you have North Carolina right now?
I currently have North Carolina as a 8-point victory for Donald Trump, almost an 8-point win, and he's up in the odds at 68%.
Okay. We have it at Trump +4 currently with VT Analytics. So
you guys have Trump +4. That's kind of what
we're going in. And by the way, that's minimal.
Mm-hmm.
That's minimal.
Conservatively, yeah.
Yep. And so
So when we plug in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, there's 270. That's it. Doesn't even need the Nebraska 2nd district. He doesn't even need Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, or Nevada. He's already at the 270 mark.
That's correct. And you've got Maine split, right?
Yes, because the 2nd district is a very rural district, and Donald Trump has appealed to that electorate quite a bit. It actually hadn't gone red for a while. Hadn't gone red since the 80s, I believe. So it had been quite a long time since a Republican had won it. But when they won the 2nd district, they won the whole state together. It's only been recent that Maine's kind of had this weird urbanization in the Maine's 1st district, and the 2nd district's kind of remained a pretty rural area. And so Donald Trump was able to appeal to those voters. So he kind of picks up that extra electoral vote. This is pretty much it for the segment. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe for more content just like this. And thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate the commentary and analysis that we had, and to kind of share your thoughts on the polling and the industry itself, and how, at the end of the day, we want to give people the most accurate analysis of this race, because I think it's important for people to do so. We don't want people to have a mindset that, oh yeah, one candidate's up or the other, regardless who it is, and then it ends up being close, or oh, somebody is leading by so much and then it ends up being the exact opposite. We don't want people to kind of have that misinformation. But you guys have any closing comments?
I just wanted to thank you for your work as well. Obviously, it's something that we have referenced on our shows. We referenced it at the debate night. It's something we refer to when we go through VT Analytics as well. So thank you for all the hard work that you put in, diving into the crosstabs, diving into the margin of error. And it's just comforting to know that there are people out there who are committed to providing the objective truth and data to the American people. Because like you said, at the end of the day, they deserve to know the truth. And like Tom said, we don't want people thinking, oh, it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter, because of a narrative that the liberal media, or just the media in general, are painting, saying that it's either going this way or that way, no matter what. No, let's dig into the crosstabs, let's get to the truth, and let's report on that so people are aware.
Yep. And that's why we compile it during the week, and we do one show a week. Thursdays, around 1 o'clock, 1 to 2 o'clock Eastern. We drop every Thursday. Please tune in to Decision 2024 in the Valuetainment channel.
And all right, guys, thank you so much for joining on, and we will see you guys in the next video.